ignorance is definitely not bliss. Ignorance might be a numbing sensation, a bit of superficial level enjoyment. मज़ा आता है, उसी तरह की मज़ा, right? But you can't really be in bliss with ignorance. Because otherwise, what's the source of your bliss, right? Where does bliss come from? I mean, you can't order it on Amazon. Where does it come from? So it's either going to come from outside or from inside. If it's going to come from outside, and I'm in a state of ignorance, what are my options, right? Drugs, alcohol, that type of masti, right? Well, that's not bliss. That's called chemical intoxication. And you come down. It's got a half-life, a very short half-life. In a few hours, it's over. Then you're hungover. So that's not really bliss. Things like parties or movies or shopping trips or a good meal, you couldn't actually call them bliss. You might say you enjoyed the food, but you'd have to be living a really shallow life for the most bliss you get to come from just a meal or a movie. Sure, you enjoy it. But if you don't have an inner bliss for something you're experiencing outside to hook into, it's going to be really superficial. Then it's just enjoyment, momentary pleasure. Some reward chemicals going in our brain. It's not bliss. So the peace that you want, it's also not peace. Because the truth really is, at the end of the day, when you lie down to go to sleep, we know a lot more than we let on during the day. We're not quite as stupid as we may look or as we may act in order to convince ourselves that we are happy and everything is great, right? In order to sort of curate our identities on social media. As though this cappuccino with, the flour drawn in the foam that I've taken a picture of and pasted with a selfie really is the highest source of bliss. Well, we know it's not. And in a quiet moment at the end of the day, we know we're not blissful. So ignorance doesn't actually lead to the bliss or the peace. We have to stay very, very busy to keep ourselves from being quiet enough to realize, my God, I'm actually not happy at all, or certainly not deeply happy. And so it's a beautiful question that you ask. You say for our generation, for the younger generation, and it's interesting because you're right, the older generation really did seem much more able to find it. And the reason is, interestingly, they were less drawn by a lot of this external world. There was a lot more emphasis on spirituality, on values. I mean, if you asked your grandparents how many hours in the work week your grandfather worked, it's very unlikely, unless he was, bonded laborer somewhere, the equivalent of sort of a slave somewhere. If he had his own choice in his own work, it's very unlikely he was working 100-hour work weeks. It's very unlikely that by the time he and your grandmother had time to be together at night, it was 10:30. Very unlikely. Very unlikely that someone else was waking their kids up, your parents up, and putting them to sleep at night. Now, change has happened, and we can't rewind the world. Nothing is good or bad, better or worse. With development, with progress, with time, we get changes. Our world is different. And it doesn't serve us in any way to say better, worse, good, bad. We simply say, okay, here we are. But we look at it eyes wide open and we say, wow, that's so interesting. Maybe I actually could implement some of that in my life. So for example, if I worked, 50, 60 hours a week at the company, at the office, instead of 100, I'd bring in significantly less money. I'm aware of that. Maybe I wouldn't actually make it to senior vice president. But with all of that extra time that I could spend with family, with friends, doing yoga, meditating, my hobbies in nature, doing volunteer work, seva, engaged in something that makes a difference, isn't it possible that actually I would find myself much happier on a deep level than I think I will be by whatever this 100-hour work week promises me? At the end of however many years it's going to take me to become the person at the top of the company. Maybe there is some wisdom in what our grandparents and great-grandparents and ancestors taught us. And just to allow the idea to kind of percolate in your mind and really ask yourself, you say, how do we find peace? Well, I would say to you, what are the moments in your life in which you feel peace? Surely you have experienced peace at some point, maybe just for a few moments. What are those moments? Are they moments in department stores shopping? Are they moments at weddings showing off your brand new clothes, knowing that everyone is jealous of you? Or are they moments of something much deeper, something much richer? Ask yourself, the moments in your life that you have felt bliss, what were you doing? Where were you? Chances are the moments are going to be moments that involve deep connection. Deep connection to the divine. Maybe through connection to another human being. Maybe through watching a sunset over the ocean. Maybe through lying on your back and looking at the stars in the night sky. Maybe through helping people, serving, allowing yourself to be used as an instrument in God's hands. Maybe singing kirtan with Puja Swamiji and the Ganga Aarti. But ask yourself. These are questions that, yes, I can guide you, of course, but you actually know the answer. The real key is allowing ourselves to disengage from the machinery of a system that says, oh, you want happiness? You need this much money, this title, this much power, this many followers on social media, this type of house, this type of car, this type of popularity. Just allowing yourself to be disengaged, and you can do it really through a process of Gyan Yoga. Really ask yourself, okay, yeah, it's nice to get a raise, it's nice to make money, but internally just do kind of an inner check-in. How does that feel compared with the joy that you get in doing something different? Ask yourself. And the beautiful thing is you're very young. And so you've really got this opportunity to make a decision. And I'm not saying quit your jobs and, go live in caves in the jungle. But you've got an opportunity to decide, what is your work week going to look like? What is your version of success? How much do you really need? I mean, this is a great question to ask yourself. If you are anyone on a career path in which you believe that that path is going to bring you happiness, have a check-in. Choose a few times a year, maybe a birthday, maybe the new year, maybe a holiday, but choose 3 or 4 moments a year. And just simply ask yourself, is it enough yet? Is it enough yet? Because every year, presumably, you're going to have more than you had the year before. So just keep asking yourself, is it enough? And yeah, you shake your head, no, it's never enough. It's never enough. And at some point you realize that is so interesting. It's like, I don't know if you've ever tried to quench deep thirst with, some kind of a sugary drink, a Coca-Cola or something. And despite what every single advertisement will tell you, it doesn't actually quench your thirst. Makes you more thirsty. The body is craving water, and when you throw sugar into it, it actually needs more water. When you're really hungry, and instead of having a proper meal, you have a bag of chips or cookies. Like you decided, forget it, I don't have time to make a proper meal, I'll just eat a bag of potato chips. Well, your stomach is full, but you're not satiated. You don't actually feel like, wonderful. Now I'm great. You feel like, oh God, what did I do? You do that enough times and eventually you realize, potato chips are not the answer to when I'm really hungry. It's not actually giving me what my body is wanting. So don't rely on me. Ask yourself, how much is enough? And no one can answer it for you, but you can. And I think what you'll find is some direction there then about what your days will look like, what your weeks will look like, what your years will look like. Once you realize what it is that brings you bliss and peace, well, you go after it. And it's a beautiful time as you start your married life together. You know, spend some time, sit on the banks of Ganga together. Just, quiet in meditation, just the two of you, and really have these sorts of conversations. How much do we need? What are our priorities? Where is our joy going to come from? What are we looking at? And lastly, I would say, look at what you've seen. Because we've all got not only parents, but we've got our parents' friends. We've got the parents of our friends. There's a lot of people in the generation above us for us to look at and say, who is where I would like to end up? Who's got something that really feels to me like, yeah, that's what life's about. Not who's the one that just everybody thinks, well, buddy odd me, hey. But really, who's got something that when you're with them, you feel like, yeah, this person really. And then see how you can mold your life, or ask that person for some thoughts. That's where mentors come from. We look at people who have something that we think, I would like to have that in my life. How'd you get it? And you learn.